that's one of the biggest things that I've learned from him, where he really inspired me. And he also was sponsored by ASICS for a very long time, where he'd go around the country talking to people as well. And yeah, I wanted to bring him to you guys as well. So and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt as well. I'm sorry, Mr. William.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yep, no worries.
Yeah, so Tyler and I go back 2000, I don't know, 10, at least 10 years ago. So,
Yeah.
But he works with you guys, right? Or has worked with you guys during training? Yeah, so he's a beast himself, as you can already, I don't have to tell you that. Strong, hard-working himself. But, you know, when I speak in front of groups, you know, I don't really like to go into my accomplishments. I like to tell my groups what I had to go through to get there, right? So it's when Tyler mentions my accomplishments of making 2 Olympic teams or finishing 6 at the World Championships, I really think about my experiences in high school and my experiences in college that got me to the point to be able to perform at the Olympic Games or make the Olympic Games and have that opportunity, and some of the tough times that I had to go through to get to the point to be able to even attempt to make the Olympic Games. And you know, when I think about my running career, you know, I played all other sports growing up. I wrestled, baseball, basketball, football, swimming, you name it. And really it was from football that ended up getting me into the running scene. So we do this conditioning drill before football practice, and I was in 9th grade. And my high school, or my middle school football coach, his name is Randy Monday, he said, you know, you're doing great in football. You know, you're starting as a wide receiver, you're starting at defensive back, you're winning all the conditioning drills. He goes, you know, I think you have some talent in football, but he goes, I just think you should try to run track. He goes, just go up for the track team in the spring. Don't play baseball anymore. He goes, just give track a go and see what you can run the mile and 2 mile. And I'm like, because the big lap that we used to do before the football practice, or each practice would be about 600 yards, and I just try to win this thing each and every practice. He goes, I just think you can accomplish some big things in running. And when I mention that name, Randy Monday, I think all of us in this room have had people in our life that influence. And as I go through this talk, Randy's the first person I'll mention, but we're gonna have these people in our lives that are super important to drive us to that next level. So if I wouldn't have Randy tell me, hey, go try track, I wouldn't be speaking here right now. I'd have played football again, I'd have played baseball, I'd have probably stayed with the main 3 sports. But Randy told me to go for the track. I probably ran 15 miles a week preparing for that mile and 2 mile. And so my first mile that I ever ran was on a cinder track in Monroe, Michigan, and I ran 4:32 in the mile for my first mile ever. So he's like, you just ran 4:32 on a cinder track. He goes, that's what I'm talking about, because he was also my track coach. And in my head, I'm thinking, man, that hurt really bad. And then he goes, well, I want you to run the 2 miles. On the same day, I ran the mile and 2 miles. So I jumped over in the 2 mile and I ran 9:51. He's like, okay, now you double as a freshman. You ran 4:32 and 9:51 with minimal training. He goes, I can get you to work extremely hard and put in really focused miles. You know, you might have an opportunity to run in college one day. And that was the last thing I had. Again, all I was thinking is my friends were playing the other sports, and he's mentioning this to me as a 9th grader. And again, as an influencer in my life, as a great coach, and you have one here, someone that cares about you and really wants you to get to the next level. He was already telling me then, if you work hard and you set your goals extremely high, you can accomplish a lot of big things. And he goes, so what I'm gonna do now is, now that you're gonna go to Monroe High School, because I'm gonna hand you off to a really good coach. And again, here's another influencer in my life that I was really fortunate to have. And he goes, I'm gonna hand you off to Coach Dave Borg. And so, again, being really fortunate to have somebody in my life that knew about running and knew about high level running. Coach Borg went to Miami, Ohio, and he happened to run with 2 Olympians. So he was practicing with Olympians every day when he was in college. So when he was my head coach at Monroe High School, the goals weren't really, you know, it wasn't like, man, nobody can ever do that. He came there going, no, we can get to a high level with this program. I don't care if it's in the middle of nowhere. Monroe's in the middle of nowhere, but he goes, we're gonna make this program one of the best programs that's ever hit this county, and one of the best programs that ever hit the state of Michigan. And so what Coach would always do, we'd walk into his office, and he'd say, what do you want to accomplish? You know, what do you want to accomplish as a sophomore? And I said, Coach, you know, my dad always told me to set my goals super high, never, you know, kick the negative to the side. He goes, what do you want to accomplish? So he goes, I said, you know what, I want to be an all-stater. I want to be an all-stater in the state of Michigan my first year in cross country. And he looked at me and he's like, okay. He goes, if you want to do that, I want you to run 500 miles. I want you to run 500 miles over the summer. You're going to run 42 miles a week. It was a 12-week period. And he goes, that's going to put you give you the opportunity, not it's guaranteed, but that hard work can put you in the position to possibly make All-State. And so I do all the miles, and I had a teammate named Sean Falk at the time. And he was, you know, he was solid. He was a senior, and him and I were battling. And at that time, there were 16 races on our schedule. And I also set a little mini goal at the time, and that was to be the MVP of the team. And Sean had that same goal, so him and I battled back and forth. He beat me, I beat him. He beat me, I beat him. We get to the state meet my sophomore year, and Coach Port pulls me to the side. He's like, look, you put in the work, you're peaking at the right time. He goes, I think you can definitely be in the top 15. And I'm like, okay. In my head, I'm like, that's one of my goals I gotta hit. And the other goal, I knew if I beat Sean, I could be MVP of the team. That was another, like again, these mini goals in my head that I had written down on my training log. So we get to the state meet, and the gun goes off, and Coach told me to go out slower, because I'm not really that fast. I just can grind and try to pick people off. But instead of me listening to him, I was too excited, I was too nervous, and the gun goes off, and I take off in first place. So I'm leading the state meet of Michigan as a sophomore, and the next thing you know, with about a half mile to go, just as we all know, anybody here that runs, you start getting that tunnel vision, starts hurting really bad. People start passing me, negative thoughts start coming in my head. I'm driving. Last second, my teammate Sean Falk passes me. And then back in the old days, we get this popsicle stick, and it had what place we finished. You guys probably don't do that anymore. We had to grab this popsicle stick, and I'm bent over, I'm looking, and it said 16th. So I finished 16th. Sean Falk finished 15th. So he beat me at the banquet. He ends up being MVP. He's all state, and I felt like I was nothing. And I did stop the clock though, and this is where I love Coach Port. He'd sit us down at the end of the season too. He goes, look, you started the cross country season at the time trial, because we'd always run a time trial, and I ran like 17:57. He goes, look what you've done now. This graph kept going up through hard work, and now 16:07. He goes, so you didn't even run, you played football last year. You started to push yourself with your talent. Okay, now you're 16th in the state of Michigan, and you're in 16:07. And then he said, so what I want you to do is quit complaining and get out there in the wintertime and run another 500 miles to get ready for your track season, so you can improve on your 4:32 and 9:51. And I would probably curse him out under my breath, because I was still mad that Sean beat me and I didn't make all state, and I put in all that work. But again, it was clicking to me like, yeah, he's making sense. I kept my running log super detailed, weather conditions, everything that I did, the hard work, extra push-ups, crunches. And then I get to the track season, nothing fancy in those workouts. It was just consistent day in and day out, working hard, listen to what the coach told me to do. And my time dropped from 4:32 down to 4:24, and it went from 9:51 down to 9:33. Didn't win a state title as a sophomore. I finished fifth in the mile, and then fifth in the mile, fifth in the 2 mile. So it's double fives as a sophomore at the state meet. My sophomore year finishes. Coach pulls me into the office. He goes, what do you want to accomplish this year? I said, Coach, I want to be, I think he thought I was going to say be an all-stater again. I said, Coach, I want to be a state champ. I want to be the state champ in Michigan. And I also want to qualify, I think now it's is it Foot Locker National Championships, or the Nike team, the bigger national championship. So at that time, they took the top 32 runners in the United States. So in the Midwest, we would have to go to Wisconsin and then qualify there to be the top 8 to be able to run Foot Locker in San Diego. He said, he goes, that's your goal? And I said, I also want to be MVP. I also want to be voted the hardest worker on the team. Because my dad said, if you get voted as the hardest worker at the banquet, and you have the attendance award where you never missed a practice, the MVP is probably going to follow. And that was my goal too. Even in college, I wanted to be the most improved, hardest worker, MVP. Actually, I wanted all the awards. I'm not gonna lie to you. I wanted everything at that banquet. All right, so he goes, okay, so if you want to do that, and that's your goal, you're gonna have to sacrifice. And he knew I hung out with my friends were kind of wild, right? He knew that what was going on in high school, and they liked to do their thing. And I had fun in high school, but he told me right then, he goes, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna have to get rid of all that. He goes, no drinking, no partying, no staying out late. The focus, you have to become obsessed. Right now, junior year, I'm 16 years old, you have to become obsessed to hit these goals. And again, we're not talking Olympics, we're talking about the state of Michigan, that little, tiny dot, not the whole world. And I said, okay, I'm willing, and my dad was like, he's right. My dad was always the one, you listen to your coach, don't question your coach. If he tells you to do something, you do it, and he's not lying to you. You're gonna have to become obsessed right now, and you've got a chance now to potentially run in college. So I put in 750 miles that summer. I ran 64 miles a week. I ran double days. I started doing 2-a-days, and then I do one run on Sunday, and I started getting in the weight room a little bit more. And I also set these mini goals where I wanted to improve on the courses that I had ran the previous year. And again, back in the old days, we'd have a little notebook, which is, a little training log, and I always kept training logs real detailed on what AM, PM, things that I had to do, weather conditions on certain workouts. So I was real detailed in trying to improve. And so go through my junior year, and Sean got a scholarship to go to Miami of Ohio, so he was out. I didn't like him anyway because he took that MVP award from me. And so season starts. I started improving on every course. I broke 16 for the first time. Started getting faster, going through the season. He's like, man, Coach pulled me, he goes, you definitely have a chance to win the state title. But I also, even though there was no, we couldn't check our phones for anything at that time, I started hearing about this kid named Anthony Ham from Flint Northern. And these names, these 35 years ago, and if I could grab Anthony by the throat, I'd probably get him right now. Because he kept telling me, Coach would motivate me by saying, kid from Flint's better, he's run faster, he ran the time, he's faster. And that was his way of really getting me jacked up before workouts, right? If it was 16 times a quarter, 10 times 1,000, whatever workouts would do. And I said, all right. So then I started researching Anthony Ham. Well, we get to the state meet, and that was the first year in the state of Michigan where they ran 2 races. They ran a team race, and Monroe was fortunate to have a good enough team to make that state championship. Then they had an individual race for teams that weren't good enough, but they had individuals that could run for the state championship. But they split the races, so team race went first, individual race went second. Well, the Detroit News, which was the big paper, up in Michigan, they had this article about the cross-country people, it's like Anthony versus Williams, Ham versus Williams, blah, and I'm like, well, why does he get to go second? Because he's gonna see my time, and if he beats my time, then they're gonna consider him like the best in the state. And Coach goes, why are you looking at that? He goes, if you win your race, you're gonna be state champ. That's just the way it is, you're in that team state championship. So I run 15:42.5. And in my head though, I'm like, whatever Coach said, I'm like, baloney. Because I didn't say baloney. But I had to know what Anthony Ham was gonna run. So the gun goes off and I'm like running around the mile mark, I'm going over the 2 mile mark, and he's coming by everything that all my splits, he was right on my splits. And again, I stopped the clock at 15:42.5. Anthony's coming down, it was the IMA Brookwood Golf Course in Flint. And he got to run his home course, which is another, I don't think that's fair. But he got to run his home course. So he's coming down the fairway, and I'm like on the sideline, and I didn't do jiu-jitsu, but I wrestled a little bit, so I was thinking, man, I'm gonna tackle this sucker right now. He comes across the line, and he runs 15:42.4. Now it's 15:42.5. So Coach had this red and white van. I'm like hitting it, I'm mad, I'm hyper competitive, right? So I'm super pissed off. And he's like, you're the state champ. He's trying to hug me. I'm like, oh, no. But now they're going to put in the paper, Anthony, the dream team, Anthony Ham's #1 in the state. He goes, you're crazy. You're the state champ. He goes, now what you have to do is get ready for 2 weeks, because now you're going to drive over to Wisconsin, because your next goal, right? He was already done with what just happened. He was already at the next goal. And that next goal was to drive over to Wisconsin and try to be one of the top 8 runners in the Midwest. So my dad took off work, and my dad worked in the foundries, and he always told me, how hard it was to work at Ford, and he was a grinder. But he took off work for this trip. My dad was a chain smoker, Mountain Dew drinking guy. He's just a rough. So as we're driving over there, he's like, I'm taking off this, and he's smoking cigarettes. My head's out the window. I'm like, Dad, I'm trying to get ready for this race in a couple days. But he's like, you better make top 8. And he kept on driving. So we get over to Wisconsin. Coach says, start picking people off. You're a junior, you're not a senior. There's gonna be some tough runners. Now you're looking at the whole Midwest. And remember, I started in Monroe trying to make the team, and then made the team, made varsity, #1 on the team. So, that dot gets a little bigger. And all of us, if you were in Finley, you can make your dot bigger the better you do, the more work you put in, right? We're starting with these little goals that keep getting bigger, going up that staircase to success, I call it, right? So I ended up in first place with less than 500 meters to go. We come off this hill. It was at Racine Parkside. This course was awesome for cross country. It was muddy, it was perfect, a lot of hills, a lot of hidden trails, and you guys have run some courses that are just cool cross country courses. And we come off this bank, we go down the hill, there's a finish line. I'm like, man, I'm seeing the San Diego beach. I'm like, I'm going to the beach, I'm gonna make it. Gonna get to stay at the Hotel Del Coronado. 8 people passed me in the last 500 meters, I finished 9th. And they take the top 8. So I didn't make it. So I go back, Coach Bork didn't go over, I call him, and I'm like, Coach, he goes, man, I said I didn't make it, I finished 9th, and I'm burning. And I already knew what he was gonna say, because my dad wasn't even talking to me. He was just like, man, I didn't work, you didn't make it. we got to drive back to Michigan now. And coach goes, yeah, but look, now you didn't run as a freshman. You're in 1607. You won a state title. In my head I was mad at Anthony Ham. And now you've stopped the clock at 15:38. So I went from there's no running, 1607, 15:38 through the hard work. And he goes, so what I want you to do, nothing magic. He goes, I want you to take a day off, which is going to be the drive back home. And he goes, I want you to run 750 more miles over the winter. And what it's like with the weather in the Midwest. It was hard to get in that mileage as a high schooler, right? I'd try to run before school. I'd run 2 schools, sometimes shower, then run after school practice. And I got in those miles. I ran 64 miles a week during the winter time, get ready for track, go to the track season, and my times dropped again, 424 to 415, 933 down to 911. And I was second in the state in the mile. I got beat by Mark Renardi from East Kentwood, ran 415.87. I was 415.88. And again, I know all these times because they still piss me off that I did these races. All right. But I came back and I won the mile in 9:11. Second place is 9:13. This kid named Chris Inch from Farmington. Season's over. Now I'm going into my senior year. So coach says, hey, now, what's the goal? And again, he's thinking, I'm going to say, I want to make the nationals. I want to be one of the top 32 runners. At that time, again, through the hard work, through sacrifice, not hanging out with my crazy buddies, I love them to death, and they're still some of my best friends that I have some good times with. I sacrificed that. I started getting letters from Tennessee, Florida, LSU, all over the country, full scholarship offers. I'm like, man, this is really happening now. And it happens in a blink. And as you guys already know, yesterday you're in 9th grade, now you're sitting here in college. It goes by like that. So now in my senior year, I'm in his office. He says, what do you want to accomplish? I said, Coach, I want to be the #1 runner in the United States in high school. And he's like, ooh. He goes, okay. He goes, I want you to run 1,000 miles over the summer. He goes, that's 84 miles a week. It's 12 miles every day. It's 12 miles, 6 and 6. So you're gonna come to our voluntary practices because they're really mandatory, but he called them voluntary. So I'll do 6 miles in the morning, 6 miles at night. Hit the weight room 3 times a week. Sundays was a long run, which was 12 miles. And coach would always have us do 16 times 100 before practice, 16 times 100 after practice for accelerations for our speed. So that didn't even count for our miles because it was an extra 2 miles every single day. But that was 16 times 100 that we'd do. And he goes, I also want you to go to summer school. I said, summer school? He goes, yeah, because now you're gonna take all these recruiting trips. You might have a chance to go to Warsaw, Poland for the World Junior Championships if you can do well at the trials there, come February, because he had that long-term plan in mind, right? He saw me, my coach in 9th grade handed me off. He's like, you can do some really good things through hard work. And so now look, now he's had that vision for me, right? And then I believed in his vision. And so next thing you know, I said, okay, I'll run 1,000 miles. So, and at that time, the program really started rolling because I was pushing myself, and then the kids behind me that came from a really good program in middle school, they started seeing me push. So they started going, man, if he can do it, we can do it. And now, the group behind me, 2 years, the group that were sophomores, after I left, there was 7 full rides off that team. Tim Pitcher, Chris Brown, I'm talking about 739 for the 4x8. They had 7 kids under 9, 10 after I left. So once they saw that, hey, you can work hard and good things can happen, that's when Monroe, just like Coach Bort's vision was, we're gonna turn the school into a great program when it was never anything to begin with. That's the reason it always bothers me when I think about small towns that are like, well, we're from this town or we're from this school, we'll never be able to do anything. I think that's just complete BS. I think if you've got the hard work and people follow and they throw all this garbage over here and keep it out of the way and they stay on this track, any program can become a great program. And that's what happened with us from 87 until early 2000 when Monroe became a dominant program because of him, guidance, hard work, sacrifice. So I ran 1,000 miles over the summer. That year I set a mini goal again. Mini goals are important because you've got these major goals, but you also want to take these mini goals, each dual meet, each invitational. I wanted to improve on all those, but then I also set my goal to break every single course record out of running, so 16 straight course records, right? So we had 6 home meets that year in the fall of '86. So 6 home meets is hard to break the course record because you got to run your home course. So what I would do is I would go really hard through 2 miles, and then I would have I'd hear the split, and then I'd slow down on purpose so I could build a buffer, try to get the record on the last, for the 6th time at home. So I'll never forget on the 6th race, this is a true story. So the 6th race, my high school girlfriend breaks up with me the day of. And this is another true story. She tried, this is like 30 years later, she tried to friend request me on Facebook and said, out. That's how I Carter. It let her in. It let her in my social media circle. All right? And so, I didn't break that course record. It was beside the point, but I improved on all that. I actually ran 14:54 in a dual meet. First person in Michigan to ever break 15 now. Dathan Ritzenheim, some people ran really fast, ran 14:10 after me. But I ran 14:54 in a dual meet against Belleville. I think second place was 17:35. But then I get to the state meet. Anthony Ham from Flint Northern was on a team. His team, he led by example, and his team was good enough to qualify. So I got to go against Anthony, same course. I dropped my time on the same course from 15:42.5 down to 15:08. Anthony was second in 15:23, but I wasn't happy because remember, my goals had changed, right? My target had changed. Here I wanted to just be an all-stater, but then I changed it again, and I changed it again, then I wanted to be the best, so I wasn't satisfied. I was never satisfied. I had to keep going. And so then, my dad takes off work again after I won the state, comes over, takes me over, and he's telling me the same, he goes, here we go again. It's already been a year. You better do something here since, and I said, I'm gonna do something. So I went out, gun goes off. I dropped my time from 15:38 down to 15:12 and broke that course record at the time, and I won that race. But again, I couldn't celebrate. People always wonder, like, man, you never celebrated anything. I'm like, yeah, because as soon as I'm done with that, I've got to think about the next thing. I got to think about the next thing to get better, the next workout, the next training session. I was obsessed with the next, like I wanted to break records in training. Like, what's the best 3x2 mile ever? What's the best 6x1/4? What's the best 15K tempo? And I know you're probably looking at me like I'm crazy, but I am a little bit crazy. That's how I made it to the Olympics. And so I fly out to San Diego, and there was a kid named Mark Davis, and he went to Balboa High School in San Diego, and he got to run on the course at Balboa. So it was his home course. He was a 4:04 1600 meter runner as a junior, like 1:49.8, and he could also run distance. He ended up being an Olympian as well in the steeplechase. He went to University of Arizona, but he got to run his home course. Coach says, look, man, this kid's fast. You might have to just, as soon as the gun goes off, blast it. Just try it. You're gonna have to burn the kick out of it. So the gun goes off. Well, Mark had the same idea. It's his course, right? He knew it. Ins and out, everything, every turn, he knew it. And the gun goes off, and he pushes the pace. He comes through the mile in 4:24 in high school. And we've got 2.1 miles to go, and he's at 4:24. I'm like, and I'll never forget, I still have dreams about this. At that time, the Midwest, we had black uniforms, yellow stripes, and then the West had white with blue stripes. The South had red with white stripes, and the Northeast had blue with black stripes. And it had it was cool uniforms, cool kit that we received to run the Nationals. But I still wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and seeing Mark's white butt and that white uniform, and I couldn't close that distance, right? And he was just hammering, he's hammering. I'm like crying, there's my goal again. I want to be national champ. It's so important to me. Didn't care about state title, didn't care about winning the Midwest. Didn't care that I got a 4 at the University of Tennessee. That was my major goal for that year. And Mark, he just stayed ahead of me, so I was grinding that. And if anybody had the chance to run Balboa, the last 250 meters, you come up through this road, then you come around the turn, a little bit of a turn, and he looks back, just to kind of put it in my face, and then he points the rest of the way going like this, like he's high stepping into the finish line. He stopped the clock at 14:36. If you guys know that course, the record to this day still stands. Ruben Reyna in fall of 85 ran 14:35. So if Mark wouldn't have been a showboater, he would have the course record. He probably ran 14:30. So the moral of that story is when you do stuff really well, you don't need to showboat. I mean, there's football players that I like to, like Barry Sanders. When he scored a touchdown, just hand the football over. He's been there before. Because what happens if somebody's a showboat, what Mark did to me, and then when he went to Arizona, every time I raced him, my game stepped up. Every time I hit a training session, I knew he was going to race him, I stepped up. And so from that race, he never beat me again. I beat him like 33 times from that race until we finished running through our professional career. Never beat me again, because all I can think about is him pointing my face and putting his finger up. And on a side note to that, there was another guy, and you guys would know him now that time's passed so much, there was another runner from Ohio, Bob Kennedy. Does anybody know Bob Kennedy? Yeah. So Bob Kennedy was the type of guy, he would beat me a lot. He went to Indiana. I beat him in high school a few times. He went to Westerville. like when Bob would beat me, he would turn around, shake my hand, say, it was a great race, great job. And then he would walk off. And I'd be like, he's not giving me any ammo to get mad at him. Every time, it's like, I don't know, I beat him once at the World Championships in England, I beat him over 12 feet. But NCAAs, all the races, you just beat me. You know, it wasn't, we had this tri-meet at Miami, Ohio once, against Ohio, Miami, and it was Tennessee. We drove up from Knoxville. And I thought I beat him there, and he got me by a half second at the lines. Sure enough, shook my hand. It was a great race. And I was like, gosh, give me something. But that's the way you should react, right? When you guys do really well, you know, you're ready for your next practice. Shake somebody's hand, great job. Because everybody, you know, running's hard. We're all, you know, if you're really doing it right, you're sacrificing. I don't care if you're the last, you know, 8th person on the team, whatever it is. When you're trying to get better, this is a hard sport, and it should be hard. You know, so when somebody's trying their best, the encouragement side of it, you know, hey, good job, keep training, you gotta get ready for that next training session. Always encouraging it. And if I had, you know, when I think about my inner friends of mine, Mark's my friend, it took a while for me to be Mark's friend. But, you know, when I think about those guys taking that Bob Kennedy approach, you know, bust your ass, you know, really work hard, and congratulate people, you know, don't give them any extra fire. So anyway, I stopped the clock at 14:49.1 at the Foot Locker course. So he beat me by, you know, he was 14:36, I was 14:49.1. I call a coach up from the Hotel Del Coronado. You guys know where that, anybody stay at that hotel before? Super nice hotel on the ocean. I didn't want to celebrate, everybody else is going out. And I'm like, I just had my running log out like 1,000 miles. I ran all that miles and I got beat. And I started thinking about the track season. Coach, I call up coach, goes, you know, how'd it go? I said, I finished second. And he goes, and I said, Coach, I already know what you're gonna tell me. You're gonna tell me to take one day off and run 1,000 more miles over the winter. And that's what he did tell me. So I went back home, ran 84 miles a week to get ready for my senior track season. I accepted the full ride March of my senior year to the University of Tennessee. Almost went to Wisconsin, it was close. Almost went to the University of Texas, but Tennessee paid me more money. Well, now they can, no NIL money. I'd have been rich, right? But there's no NIL money in the 80s. We had none of that. So I got the full scholarship. I dropped my times from 4:15 down to 4:12.97. Finished second in a mile again because I thought I had a kick. Cliff Dwell from Lake Orion ran 4:12.96. Got me by whatever this is, that lean. But I came back in the 2 mile, I won the 2 mile and 9 flat point, 901.04 in the 2 mile my senior year at Monroe High School. And then again, we're talking about influencers. Coach Randy Monday, who saw the talent on the football field, great positive, you know, tell me which way to go direction-wise, listen to that direction. Hands me off to a great coach, my high school coach. And then Dave Bork said, okay, now you're going to the University of Tennessee, and I'm gonna hand you off to Coach Doug Brown. And Doug was a 3-time Olympian, 72, 76, and 80, the boycott year. He was a 3-time Olympic distance runner, and he was my head coach at the University of Tennessee. So it was no different. And again, we can go through these, and again, in my mind, when I think about this talk, it's the failures, but they kept driving me forward, right? I set this goal here, I missed it by 1 place when I was 16th as a sophomore. My junior year, I missed it by, in my head, I missed it by a 1/10 of a second, 15:42.5 to 15:42.4. But again, 16:07. So everything started going up because I set my goals, you know, just out of reach to get to that next level. And then it was no different when I hit, and coach was the same way at University of Tennessee. Coach Brown would say, you know, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be SEC champ as a freshman. I finished second in cross country. You know, I want to be All-American as a freshman at the University of Tennessee. Missed it by 1 place because they had taken the top 25 Americans at that time. It went up to 34th, I got 35th. You know, so, but again, my times were dropping. And then as soon as I got to the track season, I dropped my 5K as a freshman. I ran 14:10 as a freshman. By the time I finished, I was down to 13:41. By the time I finished my professional career, I got it down to 13:19. My 2 mile, I started at 9:51. By the time I finished my professional career, I got it down to 8:14 for 2 miles with a 3:03 last 1200. I was trying to get to 8:10. I was trying to double 4:05s. But you can see, here's my starting point. You know, when you think about my first 2 mile, 9:51, then I finished at 8:14. And you think about my mile, I started 4:32. I finished at 4:09. I wanted to break 4. That was one of my huge goals. And I'll never forget that race. I was at ETSU at an indoor meet. And I had it down. My high school teammate, Tim Pitcher, who ended up going to Tennessee 2 years after I got there, he's a sophomore that ended up running 1:49 and 4:10 in high school. He came to Tennessee with me. He said, I'll pace you, man. I goes, I'll pace you to the sub-4. So I wasn't fast, so I said, I need a 60, I need a 60, I need a 60, and then I need a 59.9. That's how I'm gonna break for. I couldn't really get after it that fast at the end. So he takes me through in 62. I'm like, Tim, that is not good. Right? So I come across the line at this race and I gutted it out because I'm like, this is my chance to break. You know, it was an oversized track like this, so it was nice. Come across the line, I look at the scoreboard and it says 3:59.97. Got it. But then the FAT, when the official time, so I'm like celebrating, like going, yeah, broke four. And then over the announcement, they're like, and the official time of today's mile, 4 flat .009. And I was like, oh my God, this is gonna fit my talk in about 35 years. So that's what I'm saying. So, you know, again, all these times sound great, but all of us have a starting goal. What was your first mile ever?
Couldn't tell you.
Your first mile?
No.
How about, give me your first mile. You don't know your first mile.
5:50.
5:51. Probably, you guys gotta know it. Give it to me.
I don't know.
You don't know it either? First mile. 5:15. Never mind. For the mile. There you go. That's not game big. It is what it is. 6:52. Don't know. Who does know their mile time, their first mile ever? Okay, you already said it right there. 6:31. 7:04. How about 2 mile? How about 5K, their first cross country race that hurt like crazy? What was it? Right here.
20:39.
20:39, 7-minute pace, 6:45s. All right. Anybody else? First cross country race. 22:07. That's my point. Every one of you can get out a log, old school log, or however you're going to input your information on your work log, I call it. Put your time in there, and everyone can have a story like mine. Why not? Right? And everybody in here is going to have their own goal. No, I had so many people come up to me in my career and say, "Hey man, sorry you didn't win the gold." I'm like, "What are you talking about, sorry? 10th place was the best I could do. I dove across the line for 10th because I always treated like every place was a gold medal. Like I would dive for 8th. Like, why'd you dive for 8th? Because I wanted to beat the guy that got 9th, right? And then so if you don't do that, if you don't have that mentality, like if you're 7th place and you're barely fighting for the varsity, that next place is going to push the next place in turn, which pushes the next place, and then Finley becomes better and better and better. And more people want to come to Finley to make this cross-country program better and better. And that's the mentality you should have. You should look at other people from high. What if I said, what's the best women's cross-country program in college? What would you guys say? What school? Anybody know?
At our level?
Yeah.
Grand Valley State?
No. I'm talking about like
Oh,
Division One.
Division One.
Division One.
Well, NAU this year.
NAU, and then Grand Valley, it's your guys.
Yeah,
level,
D2.
Right? Yeah, D2. But see, that's where you can make what you want to make of it. Those, the team there, they're setting their goals and they're trying to get better each and every practice. No different than Finley. You guys can do the same thing and start now. But again, just like my coach, Randy Monday, Dave Borg, Doug Brown, definitely my dad. It's the decisions that you make outside this practice room and that's the decisions that really get you to the next level. Because there's going to be a lot of decisions. When you can work hard, you're going to be in that small percentage. I'm teaching jiu-jitsu now. I tell my younger students all the time, it's easy to make the decision to be over here doing all this and skipping practice and not giving it your all, because we all know if we're giving it our best. Like you could go back home after a thing and you know in your head if you did your best workout possible. It doesn't mean you have to be first in the interval session. It doesn't mean you have to be first in the tempo run or the hill session or whatever it is. But it means when you get in your car, you're going back to your place where you're living, you know that you did your best that day. And if you can do that and listen to your good guidance, it's almost impossible for you guys not to have the story that I have for yourself when you look back in 35 years and say, that guy that came in with a black eye and cauliflower ears that made the Olympics, he was right. Because I don't have to look back now and say I woulda, shoulda, coulda, because you did the best you can do. And if that's 10th at the Olympics, or if that's making the varsity here, or if that's running a 18-minute 5K in cross country, whatever it is, then you guys can feel good about it. But what you don't want to do, like I have a lot of friends back home, they always talk, man, I woulda, shoulda, coulda. I coulda did that, I coulda did this. I'm like, it's too late now, it's over. So that's the way I like to end my talk. Never say I woulda, shoulda, coulda. You have the opportunity now, senior, freshman, sophomore, junior, whatever it is, to start making each day the most important day, and set your goals right out of reach, right out of reach. You might get a couple here and there with those mini goals, but you know, it's always good to have them, like you're scratching for the next, and then keep moving forward, okay? So I'm actually starting my vacation today. I'm gonna drive to Florida, and I'm gonna chill on the beach for about 2 weeks. And I'll go back and keep hammering jiu-jitsu. So, and there's gonna be a great jiu-jitsu tournament here on Saturday. You should come check it out. I don't know if you guys know much
You guys
about
are
it,
busy, huh?
but Tyler's hosting a jiu-jitsu tournament here. There's gonna be a lot of people competing from Ohio, Michigan, and Midwest. So it'll be a cool time to come check out his expertise as well. Before I take off to Florida, any questions you guys have on anything from injuries, what I did when I had to deal with it, shoot any questions you have right now. Come on, somebody's got some question.
So I guess I have two questions, and they're kind of hand in hand. So first, like when you're getting into like the second half of a race, and it's like it just hurts so bad, and the negative thoughts are creeping in. What kind of strategies?
What
have
did I do?
Yeah.
I would always think about my running logs. Like I always think about, I'm doing the absolute best that I can do right now, and I'm gonna keep pushing. And again, my mentality was every person that was in front of me was for first place, so that would make it extremely hard for me to let that band break. You know what I mean by that little rubber band when you start losing contact with someone in a track race across country? I would fight like mad for that place to be extremely difficult to get away from. And then I would keep pushing, and that's the way I approached. And every night before a big race or any race, I would always look at my training log and say, I've done everything up to this point, and I know that the people to my left and my right haven't done what I've done, so if they are gonna beat me, they're gonna remember who I am. And again, it doesn't have to be first. It can be that person you get right at the end for 17th. It can be that person for 53rd. Whatever it is, you're gonna be like, man, that guy didn't stop. You know, he didn't give up, he just kept grinding to the end. You know, but the key to that is how much you're putting in that work log. If there's not much in there, then there's a lot of negative doubts. You know, the doubts start creeping because you didn't work hard enough.
Favorite race of all time?
My favorite race of all time is actually a race that I got second in against Bob Kennedy. I ran 8:14.05. 8:14.05. Bob was 8:14.02. You can look at it on YouTube if you punch in Prefontaine Classic. That was in 1995. Because I thought I could get him, and I just didn't get him. But that was my favorite. Yeah, I think going to the Olympics in '92 was awesome because it wasn't necessarily the competition, it was all the awesome people I got to meet. I mean, you know, having meals with like gold medalist swimmers or gold medalist tennis players or high level basketball players. I got to meet Michael Jordan, the dream team. We all got to, you know, have this little meet and greet with the dream team, which was awesome. And, you know, just being able to see what other high level athletes and what makes them click, then I kind of realized that I wasn't that crazy because they're crazy too. And the way you maximize your talent is you got to be a little different. You know, because again, there's a whole bunch of people that are normal, but to be at the highest level you can be at, you got to be a little different. And that's what I found in my 2 games. So man, that's what makes these athletes the athletes they are, is because they are different. And my first race, the center track. Center track is still there. It's all overgrown with weeds and stuff now, but I'll never forget. Every time I drive by there in Monroe, I'm like, man, that 432, and I had spikes about this big as an old 1984 spike, a Puma spike. But I'll never forget running that Model 2 on that center track that kicked off my career, got me keep going. Any other?
Are there any books that you recommend?
Any books? I was always so busy working, I never even read books. I just kept going. I don't know, you mean for like motivation?
Yeah.
I'm in the process of writing my book, so when that comes out, check it out. Maybe I'll do the audio book, I'll do my voice. I think a book.
Arnold's new book.
Hmm?
Arnold's new book. Arnold wrote a new book called Be
I mean, there's
Useful.
Goggins, there's motivational books out there. I just feel like write your own book, man. Because I feel like, you know, you guys have the opportunity to write your own book every single day and what you're gonna do each day. You know, and I know that sounds great. Again, I like to talk about it because at the beginning, it's not about just winning all the time. You're winning when you're busting your can every single day for yourself. And that's gonna continue to push, right? So you're writing a great book right now.
did you ever have any like major setbacks, maybe like injuries or something that made you start to doubt like the work?
Yeah, I mean, my first injury was a stress fracture in '94, so I started running in '84, and then I was injured in college in '94 with I had a stress fracture in my right foot, my third metatarsal. And that stuck because I was getting ready. I just won national championship on the track, and then I won the Olympic trials in '92, won nationals in '93, and I had a streak going. So my goal again, I wanted to dominate the whole '90s. Like I said, this goal, like I'm gonna win 10 years straight in the national championship, and my foot broke during a training run, and I was trying to hold it together. Anybody had stress fractures in here? They're not fun, right? It's like it's hard to run through a stress fracture, but, you know. And so I started to doubt myself, but I just took a mentality like, man, I'm gonna treat my rehab like it's the Olympics, you know. So I couldn't really do anything. I was in the pool, I'm doing a jog. I wrote every workout down in there. I do get on that arm bike, anything I could do to duplicate what I would feel for the training session. So when I got through that, I just kept grinding and setting goals for my rehab. Yeah. But I mean, everybody's gonna get down. Nobody's. You know, I had some bad days in training. Where, man, you know, I wanted to average this time, I didn't hit it. You know, it's a windy day and it's nobody's. You know, it's just a bad day. Everybody has bad days. But I think to me, like those bad days are the ones that can drive you forward. So you got to look at that as the challenge day. Like, okay, I'm not feeling that great, but I can still do something to get better today. Any other questions? Anything from the coaches?
Well, kind of expanding on that, how do you feel like when you have those bad days, like turning that into a positive, or how do you move forward from having a bad day?
I mean, '96 was probably my worst as an athlete. I ended up dropping out of the 1996 games. How about that? So Adidas at that time gave me a 10-year contract, right? And they turned me into the poster boy. I was in ads in Sports Illustrated. I was in the subway. I was on the side of buses. I was supposed to win the gold medal, and they gave me not a lot of money, but enough money to make me smile. And I had a bad day in the semifinals, and they only took to make the finals in Atlanta was the top 8 in each semifinal. So it was the top 24 guys in the world, and then we had to run a semifinal to make the final. And I lost contact with ninth, and it was just a horrible day. And I'll never forget, I peeled off the track and didn't even finish the semifinal. So that was another, talking about a down point, you know, because here I was, you know, working my butt off all the way to beat, and I had finished the World Championships in '95 in Sweden. I was the guy from America that was gonna, you know, win a gold, and you know that was the push behind me. That I had one of the worst days of my life, but I just said, you know, when I got back home, I said, what am I gonna do? You know, I gotta keep working. I gotta keep driving. In '97, I responded by having one of my best years ever in 1997, and throw that behind you, because again, it's part of your book. It's part of the story. Because nobody, when they put themselves on the line, if you do it enough consistently, you're gonna have a failure. It's just part of it. You're gonna have a bad day. You're gonna have an off day when you think things should be great. But it's how you respond to that, and you just gotta get up, not quit. Because there's a lot of people that are gonna quit. They're gonna be behind here. And again, back to the jiu-jitsu thing, I always tell my students, the harder you work over time, the more people are gonna be in your rearview mirror. That doesn't mean there's nobody gonna be up here in front of you, but man, you're gonna start putting, more people start getting behind you, you get better and better because you're not a quitter. You're not gonna stop. When you have the bad days, you just keep going forward, and when you finish your career, there's gonna be a lot of people back there. And it doesn't have to be in athletics, it can be anything you choose to do in life. The persistence in fighting those bad days will put a lot of people behind you. Any other questions? Yes?
Throughout your running career, what were some of like the recovery methods that you focused on?
Probably not enough. I mean, I hammered a lot. Like I would run hard, you know. And again, if I could go back in the time machine, and my coaches actually tried to get me to like, hey, today's an easy day. Calm down. You know, don't run so hard on the off days. Try to run a slower pace. But recovery's a tricky one, especially when you really want to improve, because you know you feel good on a recovery day. You want to hammer that, you know,